So my final presentation for our articles is on NSO's COVID-19 software. Governments ramp up surveillance. If you haven't already, please upload the PowerPoint and follow along if you would like. If not, completely up to you. I won't ever know. So the governments ramp up surveillance. With the coronavirus having infected more than 900,000 and killing more than 45,000 people all over the world, this is giving governments and their technology providers the ability to ramp up mass surveillance. So we need mass surveillance because people aren't listening to stay-at-home orders. You see that once, like in countries like Italy and China, once they implemented those stay-at-home orders and people started following them, they were starting to have less and less problems, less and less cases. So if we can do that, that would be great. However, as Americans, we don't typically like to follow the rules. And personally, working at Menards in the public, I've seen it firsthand. People don't want to wear a mask. People don't want to wear gloves. People don't want to keep their distance. If they're in the store, then they're healthy and blah, 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 and they don't look sick. And, just because they don't look sick doesn't mean they can't be carrying the virus and pass it on to you. And you could carry it and pass it on to somebody else. And, it just takes one person carrying the virus to infect 40. So on, so forth, so on, so forth. Which is why we have so many cases and so many deaths all over the world. Anyway, in the midst of the crisis, several companies, some well-known and some not, are pitching and developing surveillance tools to help governments track citizens with the goal of stopping the spread of coronavirus. So, surveillance tools. Your phone, any kind of technology you have. The government can not hack into it, but they can get your location data from certain, telecom services or telephone services, which in turn would allow them to track you and see how long you've been somewhere or if you come in contact with anybody. So, NSO Group and Cyphergate. The infamous spyware maker from Israel, NSO Group, and Cyphergate, a company that sells surveillance tools from Italy, are actively pitching surveillance tools to contain the virus in their own governments and others around the world. So, Cyphergate and NSO Group, one's in Italy, one's in Israel. They aren't, and they're pretty much exclusive to those countries. So they're trying to get their governments to use their surveillance tools. Like, hey, we could use this to help, and they're just trying to help. However, NSO Group, as we'll learn down the line, has used and abused civil rights before, or personal rights, for lack of better terms. According to the Vice.com article, from which this is, based off of, their systems are essentially mass surveillance tools that would help governments and health authorities keep track of the movements of every citizen and who they get in contact with. So, again, surveillance. Tracking you and seeing who you've been in contact with, where you've been, and just to keep you safe. And that's the whole point of all this. They're trying to keep you safe. Unfortunately, it's an invasion of privacy, but we'll get to that later. NSO's method. So the spyware company has adapted the user interface and analytical tool that they already had developed to be used alongside its powerful malware known as Pegasus, which can hack into mobile phones and extract data like photos, messages, and phone calls from them. NSO is not collecting location data from phones. So that's the first little bit I want to take a look at. NSO isn't using malware that uses your location service. So that isn't them. That's the government. It provides the software of the malware to the governments, And then the location data from telecom companies, they get they get the location data from telecom companies and ingest it within the software. Sorry. So the governments are actually the ones that are getting this, using the means to get the location data from phones. The NSO group doesn't, their malware isn't like that. It just hacks into photos, messages, and phone calls, which is kind of scary when you get to thinking about it. Which governments are already involved? So cell phone carriers in several countries such as Italy, Germany, Austria, as well as Spain, France, Belgium, and the UK are already sharing customers' locations with their respective governments in an effort to track the spread of the virus. Once again, you see that governments are getting these location data from cell phone carriers. Neither the NSO Group nor Cyphergate are wanting to use location services. They are just trying to help. They want to keep everything private. They don't want to make people feel like they're being watched, which in a way they are. Can't get around it. But they want to make the person feel as comfortable as they can. The data is displayed on heat maps that can be filtered depending on what the analyst wants to know. For example, analysts can filter the movements of a certain patient by their last location or whether they visited any meeting places like public squares. Whether they visited any meeting places like public squares or office buildings. So the data that is gathered by the NSO group, given to the government, and the government collects the location data, that is what is used to be displayed on heat maps. And here in the next slide is an example of what that heat map might look like. So you see that there are some, red spots, big red spots in certain areas, and that's where the most abundance of people meet. So that may mean that there's, a certain building there that a lot of people attend at the same day, so on and so forth. And you see that that's where the abundance of people is. That's where people could most likely be carrying the virus and most likely can contract the virus. You want to stay away from those places if you see a data map like this. So privacy issues. With the goal of protecting people's privacy, the tool tracks citizens by assigning them random IDs, which the government, when needed, can de-anonymize. Meaning, they are trying to keep it as unpersonal as possible by assigning random IDs. When we start here at Madonna, we see that we get an ID number, just like any other school, and that's what we have to give for somebody to get our personal information. And the same thing goes for this. The government is the only ones that can see it. Scary, yes, but at least they are the only ones that can see it. Not everybody can see it. Researchers who have studied and exposed several cases where NSO Group's customers abused its products to spy on activists and journalists are skeptical that governments should be adopting such an invasive surveillance product made by a company known to have worked with governments that routinely abuse human rights. So obviously, Israel's NSO Group is based out of Israel. Israel does a lot of business in the Middle East. A lot of those Middle Eastern countries do not observe the human rights that we observe in America, which is very, very unfortunate. And these governments work with this company to use this surveillance product to be invasive and see what their people are doing and see, if somebody's trying to start an uprising against them, so on and so forth, which is, again, completely unfortunate, completely stupid in my opinion. If you're that great of a leader in the government, you shouldn't have to have an uprising. AI system. Israel's defense minister Naftali Bennett tweeted that the Israeli government is working on a world-leading AI system that will give every citizen a grade between 1 and 10 to determine how likely they are to spread the coronavirus and if they need to be tested. So Italy, or not Italy, Israel is working on an AI system, which would be pretty cool. Artificial intelligence is something that's gaining traction, has been gaining traction for quite some time now, and is still something that's being researched and understood as an exact science. So being able to use an AI system that would simply just give a grade between 1 and 10 to a citizen, based on whether or not they are gonna, whether or not they're gonna spread the virus and if they need to be tested. That's so comforting as a person. If we had something like that, that would be so great, because you don't know how nervous I get sometimes thinking, oh my God, I come in contact with thousands of people a day working at Menards, and what if that person has it and I just contracted it? I have two parents that are diabetic and a girlfriend that has an immune deficiency. I don't want to get them sick. They're the people that are most at risk. So it would just be very comforting to me. According to Israeli news outlet Calcalist, they reported that Bennett was referring to NSO's solution. So when he was talking about this world-leading AI system, he was actually talking about NSO's solution, which would use that malware Pegasus. Defense Minister Bennett also said that he is pushing to let countries around the world use the system. So instead of just keeping it in Israel, he's trying to allow other countries around the world to use this to their advantage, which would, I don't know how to feel about that. Honestly, it's a little scary, a little unnerving. So I don't quite know how to feel about that. Italian proposal. So in Italy, one of the hardest hit countries with around 13,000 deaths due to the coronavirus, a company is pitching a system that uses an app that would track a user's location via GPS, cell phone tower data, and Bluetooth. Again, this would use GPS, use your phone and your location data to figure out where you were and to track you. The Rome-based company called Cyphergate called it Human Interaction Tracking System, or HITS. Cyphergate is ready to offer the system for free to Italian authorities and pitched it publicly on Twitter. So this is a little different from NSO in the fact that their system is specifically going to use an app that would track a user's location via GPS, cell phone tower data, and Bluetooth. So if you have your GPS on, or your Bluetooth on, or you're pinging off of a cell phone tower, they're going to know where you're at. They're going to know who you are, where you're at. And that's a little unnerving to me, based off of a privacy standpoint. That's just me. So how this would work. People will voluntarily give consent to being part of the system by downloading the app and enabling to track their location. Also, Cyphergate will anonymize the data, and only the governmental agency will be able to de-anonymize it. So, again, going back to the non-anonymous, Cyphergate, just like NSO, is attempting to protect your privacy by anonymizing the data, but then also allowing the government to be able to de-anonymize it. One good thing is that it's a voluntary thing where people can volunteer for it. Personally, I wouldn't volunteer for it. Not at all. That's my privacy. I like my privacy, and yes, I probably don't realize it, but my privacy is invaded every once in a while by the government with the phones, but that's my privacy. That's my right. again, that's just me. So how other countries are involved? Other than Israel and Italy, other countries have made extensive use in surveillance technology to fight the coronavirus. So in China, the government forces every citizen, they don't just, that's not a voluntary thing in China. They make you install an app that displays whether they are healthy or not in order to decide whether or not they can travel. So this is for travel purposes. Obviously, in the United States, we have that travel ban going on. So you're not allowed to travel. I forget exactly what it was. There for a while, it was out of the country. Now it may be traveling even in the country that the travel ban is on. But China is forcing their citizens that if they want to travel, they have to provide factual evidence of whether or not they're healthy. In Taiwan, authorities track citizens so closely that one of them got a visit from the government when his battery ran out and he left his phone off for less than an hour. So this is the more extreme aspect of all of this. In Taiwan, you have no privacy, apparently, and you are being tracked 100%. Because this guy let his phone battery die, and in less than an hour, he had the authorities at his front door wondering why his phone was off. That's unnerving. Some more countries. So in South Korea, the government is collecting not only location data, but also camera footage and credit card purchases. So not only, this is complete invasion of privacy in South Korea. They're not just using your location data. They're also using camera footage. So they are seeing who you are. They're seeing your face. They can use facial recognition scanners if they want to determine what your name is. And then credit card purchases. They're following along with what you're buying. And using it to their advantage. The government of Singapore has published personal information about coronavirus patients to warn others who may have been near them. That's okay to an extent. I wouldn't publish complete personal information because that's a little, sketchy. I wouldn't want people to know that I had the virus if it wasn't that serious. And in the U.S., advertising companies are the ones that to share location information with government agencies. So when those little ads pop up on your phone, when you're playing a game, or on your computer, that's how they track you sometimes. That's scary. Very, very scary, in my opinion. And finally, my conclusion. The coronavirus is far from over, but some are worried the surveillance governments and companies are put in place will never go away. That is a concern. What if after all this is over, we're still being tracked and we're still being watched? That's a little unnerving, in my opinion. This is 100% an invasion of privacy. However, in some severe cases, like in China and Italy, with as quickly as the virus spread, this may be necessary to stop that spread. We saw it. It started in December in Wuhan, and by the time it got to the United States, they had a terrible death toll. Same thing with Italy. I personally don't want that to happen in the United States, so if we have to give up a little bit of an invasion of privacy just to let them know how many people are in one place at a time, I'm willing to do that to an extent. And finally, this is just one more thing that this terrifying virus has changed in our lives. This may just have a much higher impact than that of other things that have changed. For me personally, there's been a lot of change during this. I know for some of you there's been a lot of change too. Personally, I've had to switch to doing my internship that I got over the summer to doing it remotely because there's online classes over the summer. They're not allowing us to be on campus, so I have to do it remotely, which is fine by me. I'm a computer science student. I have no problem doing remote work. But for somebody that wouldn't have been used to it, that would be very, very scary. My job, I have to wear a mask. I have to wear gloves now. It's all just new stuff that it came so fast that nobody was expecting it. Nobody was wanting it. So that's my presentation. Let me know if you have any questions, comments, concerns. It's always nice to hear from you guys in class. I hope you guys are all doing very, very well. Enjoy your summer. I will see some of you all in the fall. And yeah, so bye.